Hi, I'm Nina Griffin, and welcome to the 12th episode of the Magical Elections podcast. This is a podcast that focuses on the intersection of astrology and magic. As you know, I often interview folks who are in the astrology and/or magical fields or are adjacent to it. Magical elections is a term that I use to describe the art of using astrology to elect the perfect moment for a magical ritual. Now, this isn't just any magical ritual. This is the specific use of astrological symbolism to invoke energies that are proper to planets, fixed stars, and other astrological symbols. I publish a monthly ebook, usually in the 25 to 30 page range now, called Magical Elections, which you can find at ninagriffin.com. And in it, I propose various times that are excellent for astrological magic. Now, in addition to showing you what some of these times are, I explain what each of them is good for, what the astrological magical symbolism is, what the magical images for each of them, what are some of the divinities or spirits that need to be invoked, as well as other information that you need in order to be a successful astrological magician. My goal is to put the information you need in one place instead of having to read a lot of different historic text to assemble all of it. It's there for you in one place. I also provide a monthly mini lesson on astrological magic, as well as a huge and growing list of resources if you want to improve or educate yourself in the field of astrological magic. So in this episode, we're going to do a few things. First, you may notice that this is a visual episode of a podcast. Well, I've decided that starting with this episode, I'm going to make a visual version, which you can watch on youtube.com/NinaGriffin, and I hope that you subscribe so that you get those future episodes automatically. But also, you can get just the audio version as you have been on your podcasting app or at ninagriffin.com, where I archive the old episodes and also feature new ones. My recommendation is, again, subscribe to the YouTube channel or subscribe on your podcast app to ensure that you won't miss future episodes. I will talk about some of the elections that are in the May issue of Magical Elections, as well as give you one free election that you can sort of use to test drive the system and to see what it's all about. Now, the thing I'd like to mention is that May is it's a relatively quiet month as far as magical elections are concerned. We've had a couple months so far this year that were just chock full of magical elections. It was kind of like they were just everywhere. You couldn't, swing a stick without hitting a magical election in certain months. This is the opposite. It's a relatively quiet month. We have 5 magical elections, so still plenty to keep you busy, but it's not like there are 8 or 10 of them, which is what we had seen earlier. However, as if to make up for it, we have one, I would say, extra special magical election this month, really something that doesn't come around very often at all. And even though I haven't looked, I suspect it's probably a few years before we could get something of this potency and uniqueness. So I want to make sure that I discuss it. So the elections that we're going to get this month are as follows. We have a fixed star election. It is the moon on the fixed star Vega. And Vega is a brilliant star in the constellation known as the falling vulture or lyre. Sometimes it's actually portrayed as a falling vulture holding a lyre, which is the stringed instrument of Apollo. And this is supposed to be a very powerful talisman for getting rid of evil spirits, particularly evil spirits that may be disrupting one's sleep. There is a connection between evil spirits and sleep paralysis in some of the old texts. And this is a talisman that is very good for those. It's supposed to be good for exorcisms, and it's also good for establishing authority over beasts. So I imagine you could probably use this talisman if you wanted to do like dog training. I am not sure that this talisman is powerful enough for cat training, however. Next, we also have 2 excellent Decan talismans. Decans are 10-degree spans of the zodiac, and each of them is associated with a number of mystical and mysterious images. Decans go back as far as ancient Egypt and have an unusual amount of power that can be harnessed for magical purposes. So this month we have Venus in the 3rd Decan of Gemini. which is supposed to be particularly powerful for beauty and the arts. The image that it's associated with really brings out the ability to express cultural and aesthetic values. So if you have an artistic talent or something that you would like to express artistically, this is going to be a very appealing and attractive talisman to draw others to your work and to your mode of self-expression. There is another Decan talisman, which is the sun in the second Decan of Taurus. And this is, I call it the Politico talisman. It's very good for, historically, obtaining nobility, but it's also good for attaining political power in general, as well as the ability to reward your followers. So all those people that helped you on your way up, this is going to give you the means to reward them for their loyalty. Now, the talisman that I am particularly excited about is the talisman of Mercury in Gemini. Now, Mercury is in his own sign in Gemini, which means that he can act very appropriately in a way that is harmonious with Mercury's nature. Mercury covers quite a lot of ground in traditional astrology. As you can probably imagine, he covers business, writing, communication, languages, learning, any kind of, art or science, but also literally the sciences of astrology and magic. So if you wanted to do a magical talisman to enhance your ability to do magic or to become a better astrologer, this is one that I would recommend. Now, what makes this election unique is the fact that Mercury is in a very unique phase with respect to the sun. So Mercury really is true for any planet. When a planet gets close to the sun, as it approaches the sun, it is known to be in a state called under the beams. Now, the exact extent of under the beams varies. Usually it's something like 15 or 16 degrees on either side of the sun. What happens at that time is that the planet becomes temporarily invisible because the sun's rays are so brilliant they simply overshadow any planet that might be in the vicinity. This is a very special and almost hazardous period for any planet. It's thought that planets are particularly weak at that time because, of course, they can't be seen. But also what's going on with them is that as they enter the beams, they are approaching a conjunction with the sun. The sun being the hottest thing in our universe, you can think of it as acting as a cosmic furnace that basically melts down, breaks down, and completely decomposes a planet down to its essential components. Then the planet is purified in this incredible solar furnace, and as it emerges from the conjunction with the sun, it basically becomes renewed and empowered and recharged through that conjunction. Now, as that conjunction continues to separate, the planet eventually emerges from the sun's rays. And that's what we've got going on here with Mercury in May. Mercury in this election is exactly at that critical point where he emerges from the sun's rays. This is a phenomenon known as phases, or you can think of it as phase, in Hellenistic astrology. And it basically means that a planet is suddenly incredibly empowered. It's shiny, it's new, it's just been to, I wouldn't say the spa because that sounds too pleasant for what just happened to it, but it's been completely broken down and put back together again, and it's ready to face the world. So the Mercury in our talisman is exactly emerging from the rays. It is going to be incredibly empowered and highly potent for its mercurial purposes. For that reason, I highly encourage you to get a copy of this month's magical elections because a talisman like this for Mercury, or really any other planet, doesn't come around all that often. Now, I want to also make sure that you know that the very talented artist and Oscar-nominated animator Min-Kyu Lee, who's been creating magical images for magical elections the last couple of months, really since March, is also illustrating a couple of magical elections this month. He will be making a magical image that you can use in your personal talismanic rituals for Mercury in Gemini, and he'll also be making an image for the last or a fifth election that is available this month. And that one is the 10th Lunar Mansion, which is something we can probably all use these days. It's particularly good for vitality, strength, and health. It's a wonderful magical election to get the health care you need. It's good for healing. It doesn't act necessarily directly, but it helps you, it seems to me, access the resources that you need in order to heal better. Which again, it's probably something that you would want to work on in general. So the free election this month is going to be at Sun in the second decan of Taurus. So this is the talisman for political power that I have described earlier. Now listen carefully. The election is set for May 2nd, 2020, and it's set for 12:39 to 12:46 p.m., set for Los Angeles, California. Now, wherever you are in the world, you want to make sure that the window of the election starts out with 16 degrees of Leo on the ascendant in your location for the start of that electional window, and that the moon is applying to trine Mercury. You don't want another aspect to another planet in this particular case. Now, the incense to use in your ritual is going to be solar, since the sun is the focus of this talisman. And for that, I recommend something fairly straightforward like ginger or saffron, things that you probably can get easily or are in your kitchen already. The name of the spirit of the Decan, there are two possible names based on our ancient Egyptian sources. One is Art, A-R-T, or Khu, which is Khoo'. If you know the actual ancient Egyptian pronunciation, please let me know in the comments. The image of the talisman, which is of course the magical image that acts on the soul without the intermediation of words, and therefore is very important in astrological magic, is going to be a man looking like a camel with hooves in place of fingers like cattle. He is wholly covered with a torn linen cloth, and he wishes to work the earth, sow, and craft or build. My recommendation for this talisman is to do a verbal petition or prayer or a paper talisman. You want to make sure that on that paper talisman, if you choose to make one, you capture the image that I just described, as well as your name and a very simple summary of the goal for that particular talisman. All right, that's it for the 12th episode of Magical Elections. I'm Nina Griffin. I hope that you subscribe for future versions of the Magical Elections podcast.